perception might be something that's not true. You know, someone can look at me and I might perceive that they don't like me and they just might be thinking about something else other than me, so I'm really not that important in that perception, you know. And that's how we do, you know, and that's how this world is. And it's sad because we think we're so special. And I think myself to be very special, and that's my perception of me, but sometimes my wife don't think that. So there's perception again. And I really like that word, you know.
But, well, I'm more of a plain talker than Stephen, and I'll just say this, and I've said this to Stephen and Fred. If Stephen were climbing out from under the bridge over 94 with a piece of cardboard in his hand and not in a suit, he would scare people. And so would Fred, standing over off 94 on the other end of downtown. And so people can have one bad experience with a panhandler, and all of a sudden, every other person who panhandles is a criminal and should go answer a help wanted sign and everything else. And I've brought people out on Nicollet Mall, and they'll say, you know, I saw that guy there 4 weeks ago, and I told you about him, and he's still there. And I say, he's waiting. He's waiting to get into housing. He's filled out 30 applications. He's waiting for his VA or SSI benefits, but all they see is a bum. My best example is an example that came when I was in a meeting with the Minneapolis Police Department and the Downtown Improvement District, and they were showing a PowerPoint about crime and panhandling, and they had this picture of a guy who was slouched down on the sidewalk on Nicollet Mall with a sign, and talked about all the problems related to that. And I said, you know, that guy has done 2 tours in Iraq. He's 26 years old. My guess is probably no one else in the room has done 2 tours in Iraq. So now he's on Nicollet Mall, living with mental health, chemical health issues that need attention, and all we do is either walk by and ignore him, or some people might stop and give him something, but it takes some dedicated time to be spent, and beat cops can't do that, church groups that come out and pass out food that can't do that, but by having people either in an outreach program or in an in-service program help people, that guy actually came and spoke at Councilmember Lisa Goodman's Lunch with Lisa. And so here he went from panhandling on Nicollet Mall to being a community educator. And he was still a panhandler and still homeless, but now all of a sudden he was the guest speaker that day. So it's very interesting how we perceive people in different settings.
I just want to reiterate what I would say is it's about relationships, and the model that St. Stephen's is leading us with about building the relationships and hearing the stories and empowering people to share their own stories. But unless we're willing to take a risk to somehow break that tie between panhandling and all the other ills of society, as if panhandling equals all those ills, we have to be willing to take that risk to debunk that and to work hard in relationships to find ways to change it. You know, those movements that were asked in these questions didn't happen quickly, but they happened a little at a time, and the relationships were an important part of that.
And I'm just going to say one final thing. I mean, of course, Monica has the opportunity, and others here as street outreach worker, to build these relationships with people, get to know them, get to know their stories, and of course that has developed all of her thoughts and feelings about who people are. The general public doesn't get that opportunity. You don't know the stories, you aren't having an opportunity to connect. I'm going to take this opportunity for one plug, and not just because I need volunteers, but because I actually truly believe that this is a way that people can change their perception of homelessness and understand what's really going on. There's an event that we do in Minneapolis twice a year called Project Homeless Connect. It's at the Minneapolis Convention Center. It brings together about 1,000 community volunteers, usually a couple thousand people who are either homeless or on the edge of homelessness. and about 400 to 500 service providers who provide services that day: mental health, housing, employment, haircuts, etc. You, every single person in this room, could come to that event and literally walk arm in arm all day long with somebody who's experiencing homelessness, hear their story, help them navigate the system, and then you understand how challenging it is to find that job or get that place to live. And then you become a better advocate as well. So I would just love to throw that out to all of you as a challenge. It may be a little uncomfortable, but it will change your life, I believe it. And then you can also share that information with your faith community or your business where you work and get others to join you as well.
I would like to challenge one thing, though. I do think that we all have a chance to hear the stories, because if we see the people every day, if we're passing them every day, we can stop and slowly build relationships. So we don't have to be the professional, the St. Stephen's outreach worker to hear their stories. Absolutely, Homeless Connect, go. But I do think that it's easy to say, oh, I'll never hear the stories. I can, if I listen.
And just one thing on Project Homeless Connect, you will be provided with training beforehand so that you know how to walk that person through where they need to be.
HomelessConnectMinneapolis.org.
And to the panel, don't be shy about speaking. That's why you're here. That's why we invited you. Jump in there. Do we have a sense of how long people typically panhandle? Is it months or years, or is it just completely all over the map?
Excuse me. It's funny, because I never dreamed that I would panhandle, and really I didn't want to continue to panhandle because there's truly no dignity in it. You kind of have to throw shame out of the window and perception out of the window, what people think of you. Throw that out the window. You don't even sit there with that in your mind. So it's funny because I never met someone down here who works at the Basilica, but I stood out in front of the Basilica one Sunday, and it was snowing. It was snowing very heavily, and I stood out there, and someone that was panhandling walked away from their sign, threw it down, and I picked it up just to see. And I got about $180 in less than an hour. And that's addictive. I had wanted to go back. And man, I see why these people do this. And I never got that right down there in front of St. Stephen's where I was doing it. I said, I'm in the wrong place.
Stephen, was it Thanksgiving or Christmas?
No, it was last year actually, and I'm not so far removed from that situation in my life, but I am so utterly grateful that has changed for me. And so I only panhandled for maybe 18 months, because that's how long I was homeless the last time I was homeless.
Well, I don't know the educated words like the rest of the panel knows, but I can say to you that the length of your paneling experience is determined by your ability or your inability to take a look at yourself, and it is determined by how long you're willing to be in a pity hole or whatever your situation is. I'm not, everybody has, I'm not saying that against anybody, but it's really determined by your willingness to make yourself better. And if you want to go down there and you want to get high every day, and it's never going to end. But if you need it to help you to find job connections and to help make your life better, then, like I say, for me, it was about 7 or 8 months, and then I had enough. Sorry.
I just want to reiterate something Fred said that I wrote down. He said he was sitting at home with no phone, no computer, obviously, to look for jobs, and no answers. And he knew that at the corner he was exposed to every person driving by. So I guess I see it as, for some people, they're going to be out there panhandling until someone